Hello, fellow members of the Midnight Society. Welcome back to another episode review from the show Are You Afraid of the Dark? Last time, we covered The Tale of the Phone Police, Tucker's cautionary story about what happens when you make prank calls. Tonight's narrative, from Betty Ann, is about a young girl who investigates the disappearance of her best friend, only to find that a house might be responsible. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I call this Season 3, Episode 5, The Tale of the Dollmaker. We open on Tucker running towards the campfire like a maniac because he's excited that Betty Ann is telling the night's story. That is irresponsible and dangerous, Tucker. You could have knocked you and Sam into that fire, causing third-degree burns about your hands and face. But I'm going to allow it because I get excited for Betty Ann stories too. And you know, not just because I used to have a little crush on her when I was a kid. Anyway, Betty Ann reveals a doll, and Tucker changes his tune completely, going back to just being Eric 2.0.
You're telling a doll story? Weak. Siesta time, man. Wake me up if it gets good.
Betty Ann says that people think of dolls as toys, but they're more like perfect little people. She says that sometimes they're so lifelike, it's like the Dollmaker took a person and shrunk them down to doll size. Yeah, that's not making the vintage doll room at my grandparents' house any less creepy. Thanks for the nightmares, Betty Ann. The tale begins with Betty Ann giving some narration about our main character, Melissa, and how she spends weekends now and then at her aunt and uncle's house in the country. For her, it was a bit of a bore until the Hendersons moved in next door and brought their Bigfoot with them.
The average American family just got bigger. Harry and the Hendersons.
Okay, no, that didn't happen. Melissa became best friends with the Hendersons' daughter, Susan, and the two would hang out every time Melissa stayed with her aunt and uncle. Only this time...
I'm sorry, Melissa, but the Hendersons moved back to town early this spring.
But why?
Am I the only one who thinks that Melissa looks like a very young Andrew Dice Clay? And that's not a point in her favor.
No, you know, I dug that. That's good, because you did your homework.
Later on in the evening, Tiny Dice Clay is talking to her mom on the phone when the real horror begins.
Now I've got nothing to do all weekend. Aunt Sally and Uncle Pete don't even have cable.
And with no cable, Melissa was forced to play outside. Melissa then goes to play bingo with her aunt and uncle. Bingo? I mean, they didn't look that old. I would like to officially apologize to any fans of bingo out there. It was wrong of me to assume that just because you play bingo that you're super old. I mean, you are, but it was wrong of me to assume it. The next day, Melissa's uncle makes her an intriguing offer.
I got some work to do on the septic tank. Want to lend a hand?
Septic tank. Gee, sounds like fun.
Frankly, I'm surprised that Melissa even knows what a septic tank is. As a child, I wasn't privy to the notion of a tank of shit buried in the backyard. I wasn't privy. Oh, that is too... Do you get it? Because privy is to have knowledge of, but it's also a toilet. Sorry. Melissa thinks she sees something in the window of the Hendersons' old house. She gets inside surprisingly easy since the door is unlocked, and then proceeds to walk through the creepy house without a fear in the world. Now, I was already having a hard time with her actions, and then this happens.
Oh, cool.
If you opened a closet door in a strange house and saw a rack of clothes, why would you start going through it? And even if the urge to play dress-up hit you, you wouldn't start going through the clothes like you know the door to Narnia is on the other side. The Dice Man heads up to the attic where she finds a dollhouse that looks strikingly like the house she's in. While looking into the window of that house, this happens. Melissa stumbles back, pulling down a curtain and discovering a mousetrap behind it. She then assumes it was a mouse that closed the door in the dollhouse before putting on the fakest display of coughing in the history of ever. Real coughing doesn't stop because you get curious. That was the kind of cough a little kid does to get attention from a parent. Anyway, Melissa becomes hypnotized by a door where the window should be and almost opens it when she gets interrupted by her aunt, who mildly scolds her for being in the house. Melissa says she thought Susan had come back, and when her aunt asks why, she says,
I saw someone in the window.
You probably saw me. Now, come on.
Bitch, if you were in the house the whole time, why didn't you answer when Dice called out multiple times to see if anyone else was there? Once outside, Aunt Sally tells Melissa that she doesn't want her going into that house, and when Melissa asks why, she says,
It's just that I'd rather you kept away after what happened.
After what? What happened? Aunt Sally, what happened?
You can't drop a statement like that and then just walk off. Who do you think you are, Brad Pitt?
And for God's sake, whatever you do, don't, under any circumstance.
Russ.
Yeah,
Can you take a look at this?
sure.
Aunt Sally finally breaks down and tells Melissa that Susan disappeared from that house and no one knows what happened. 1 minute she was there, and then she wasn't. Well, yeah. I mean, all the great ones do it. How do you think Chris Angel got his start?
What if I combine levitating and vanishing?
Sally explains to Melissa why the Hendersons left and asks her to keep an eye on the house.
Too many memories. They're keeping it, though, just in case she ever comes back.
Look, I'm not even going to pretend like I understand what the grief of losing a child would do to a person, but moving to get away from the memory of that child seems like you've given up hope of ever seeing them again. Keeping the house just in case she comes back seems odd. Personally, I think they were on the fence about it, and it was Sally who convinced them by saying,
What are you waiting for? Do it!
I also have to give props to the actress playing Aunt Sally in this scene. She is doing some acting well above the typical caliber of Are You Afraid of the Dark actors. Later that night, when Melissa is supposed to be sleeping, her aunt and uncle decide that the best place to have a conversation that she shouldn't hear is right next to her.
Anyway, Marge was beside herself with grief. She didn't know what she was saying.
Maybe not, but she said it pretty clearly. It was the house that got her.
Well, you've pretty much assured that she's going back to that house, so good job! Also, how irresponsible are these two adults? A girl goes missing. The parents of that girl think that it's the house that caused it, which also makes them keeping it more nonsensical, but I digress. And you still bring your niece around that murder house? Did you even tell Melissa's mom beforehand? So, we have a room all set up for Melissa's visit. Oh yeah, one more thing. Funny story, really, you're gonna laugh. Do you remember Melissa's friend Susan from next door? Yeah, so she's gone missing, and her mother thinks that the house is responsible. In fact, they moved out a while ago to get away from that evil place. What a hoot. Anyway, what time should we pick up Melissa tomorrow? Hello? Hello? Later that night, when Melissa is actually sleeping, she's awoken by the voice of Susan asking for her to help her. She looks out the window and sees a light on in the attic next door, so she does the sensible thing and wakes her aunt and uncle to show them. No! Of course she doesn't! She steals her aunt's keys and sneaks back into the house alone! Sensible! The Are You Afraid of the Dark writers don't know the meaning of the word.
Sometimes circumstances require you to think outside the box.
In the attic, Melissa becomes enthralled by the door again, but this time gets to open it. On the other side, she sees a hallway and her friend Susan, but Susan doesn't seem to see Melissa and wanders off down the hall. Melissa is about to step into that hall when her uncle pulls her back. He then shows her where she was about to step. Now look, I'm glad that her uncle saved her from accidentally killing herself, but what was he doing here and in full dress? It was the middle of the night and all was completely silent at their house. Wait. What was I thinking? He was probably out playing bingo. You know how those bingo parties are. They can rage all night. The next day, Melissa tries to convince her aunt that she saw Susan on the other side of that door in the attic, but of course she doesn't believe her. Aunt Sally has her husband board up the door so that it can't be reopened, but Tiny Dice Clay isn't having it. She grabs a hammer and a ball of twine from the same drawer in her aunt's craft room. You know, that drawer where you keep hammers, twine, and nothing else. Anyway, she grabs these tools and proceeds to do a little light breaking and entering. Okay, so it was some moderate breaking and entering. We learned that Uncle Pete did a really half-assed job of boarding up the door because Melissa removes the boards with very little effort and proceeds to open the door once again. She ties some twine around the door handle, and while I appreciate the motivation, we've all seen Labyrinth here, Magical evil doesn't care what methods you use to find your way back. They won't work.
Someone has been changing my marks. What a horrible place this is. It's not fair.
Melissa tests to make sure the floor is real before stepping through the door in what has to be the most 90s outfit the wardrobe department could conjure up. Seriously, down to the shoes. Once inside, Melissa quickly realizes she's in the dollhouse when she sees a kaiju-sized Aunt Sally outside. She calls out to her with no response before hearing a voice behind her tell her that she can't be heard. That voice is revealed to be Susan.
I knew you'd come. What's wrong with you? You look just like...
A whore? A geisha? A circus clown? It's okay, Mel. You can tell her. She can't fix it if she doesn't know there's a problem. It seems that the dollhouse is turning Susan into a doll, and by the look of things, the process is nearly complete, but it must be a slow one if she vanished last winter. I'm sure there's plenty of time to get her out. Oh. Well, I'm sure we can stick that back on. Melissa says that she's going to get Susan out. Susan, who seems to have limited speech, says something about the attic. Melissa doesn't really think much about it and follows her string back to the door to find...
Oh my god. The door! It was right here!
See? I told you. And to make matters worse, she has flour all over her hands from all that baking she was doing. Wait, she wasn't baking? Oh, don't tell me she's already turning into a whore. I mean a doll. She's only been in this place for like a minute.
It's not fair.
Melissa realizes that Susan was talking about the attic in the dollhouse, but finds a wooden bureau blocking the door. She tries to move it with no luck. She asks Susan to help, but Susan's not really in any condition to do so since she's mostly porcelain. Melissa says that she'll try again, but I'm not gonna lie, things are looking pretty bleak at this point. Oh. Never mind, everything's fine. Seriously? At least have her struggle with it a bit to make it believable. She couldn't even budge the thing the first time, and then she just easily tips it over like she's got the strength of an offensive adult comedian?
You're fired.
In the attic, we see a bunch of oversized items to give the idea that the girls are small. It's a fun set, but I feel like some of the props don't scale correctly. Like, why are these scissors bigger than this record? I had some small toy records as a kid, but even those things were bigger than a pair of scissors. Anyway, Melissa slowly walks Susan towards the door when this happens.
Oops.
Ooh. How horrific would it be if they went through that door back into the real world only to discover Susan's severed bloody hand in her pocket? I love it! Make it happen, Betty Ann.
What about a razor-sharp hook where her hand should be?
When Melissa opens the door, it looks as though they're looking out the attic window of the real house, probably to trick anyone trying to escape from taking the plunge. But Mel Dice Clay is not deterred. She grabs Susan, and they step out. We cut to Melissa's aunt and uncle worrying about where she went when suddenly they see her. Aunt Sally tells Melissa that she thought she disappeared just like Susan. Melissa says,
I disappeared just like Susan, and I found her!
What are you saying?
Look!
okay, let's see that bloody stump. Look, I'm not mad, Betty Ann. I'm just disappointed. Okay? I'm sorry. I can't look at you right now. So, I have questions. Where was the Dollmaker in this episode? I mean, sure, I get it. The dollhouse turns people into dolls, and you could say that's the Dollmaker, but why not just call it the Tale of the Dollhouse? Also, it sounded like the Hendersons lived in the house a while before Susan went missing, so did they buy the dollhouse and install the window door? And if not, was the dollhouse and door already in the house before they moved in? Because, you know, realtors are supposed to disclose that kind of information. Now, this property here used to belong to a doctor. Vink, I think was the name. Anyway, it's in a nice quiet area, right? It has 5 bedrooms, 3 baths, a garage, and an attic, with a door in place of a window that sometimes opens into a pocket dimension that will cause your children to disappear. Did I mention it has 5 bedrooms? The story ends with Betty Ann saying that Melissa's uncle burned the dollhouse in a bonfire that very night. And then I assume they all played a rousing game of bingo. Anyway, The absolute best and creepiest moment of the episode comes at the end, and not in the tale itself.
Where'd she get that? That's a whole nother story.
Why do I feel like that story would be better than the one you just told?
It's an old superstition.
Now for the review. I'm fairly torn on this episode. This one definitely had more of a Twilight Zone feel to it. In fact, while watching it, I was reminded of an episode of The Twilight Zone where a bunch of strangers wake up trapped in a tall cylinder. They can see the sky, but they can't find a way out. They're all dressed rather dramatically, and eventually they work together to get one person out. The big twist reveal is that they were all dolls in a toy donation can, and the one that escaped lies lifelessly on the sidewalk until put back in the can. Now, I say it reminded me, but that episode was actually a lot better than this one.
But why?
The setting was okay, though I really wish we could have spent more time in the dollhouse. I mean, that's where the episode really shined. I mean, aside from the actual, doll makeup. I loved all the oversized props and the props designed to look like fake tiny doll furniture.
That dollhouse alone must be worth a fortune. It's nothing for a child to play with.
The story is what I think is going to split a crowd on this episode. While I found the concept interesting, I wasn't really engaged by the episode. I don't fully blame the writers for that. I mean, this is just another situation where the 22-minute runtime really hobbles the storytelling possibilities. I think this could have been more interesting if it would have been told from the other perspective. Start with Susan waking up in a house that looks like hers, but is off. Weird things keep happening, things you could use for scares or to heighten the tension, as she comes to realize that she's turning into a doll and needs to escape. This is a weird stance to take, but I think this episode should have focused on Susan and nixed Melissa altogether. Or, made Melissa the one that's trapped. You get what I mean.
What on earth would make you think that?
The scares were non-existent, but that wasn't the point of this episode. As I stated previously, this was going for that bizarre Twilight Zone feel, and on that they nailed it. Sure, they could have mixed in some scares had they gone a different way, but that's not the story they were telling here. That being said, younger me wouldn't have found this episode scary either, but the idea that turning into a doll makes you look like a cheap floozy would have prevented me from going through any doors near my Castle Grayskull playset.
Suit yourself.
The acting in this episode was pretty good. Melissa wasn't great, but she was leaps and bounds better than some of the other younger actors we've seen on the show. And I'm not saying that she doesn't have range, but since the episode lacked real tension, we just didn't get to see it. Susan was barely in the episode, but she was instructed to play the doll like an Are You Afraid of the Dark ghost. Without emotion, and on that she nailed it. The adult acting this episode was terrific. Uncle Pete had delightful, goofy uncle energy, but also had an air of like he might have killed Susan and buried her body in the septic tank about him. Seriously, if this story were on an episode of CSI Canada, he would have been their prime suspect. The real highlight of the episode, though, was Aunt Sally. She is given multiple opportunities to show her acting chops, and she does not disappoint. In fact, if I were her, I would have listed excellent on-demand cry face on a resume.
Oh, Peter. Look.
Betty Ann, while there were things about this that I enjoyed, I just can't fully get behind it. The tale of the Dollmaker does not meet the approval of the Midnight Society. Now, the Midnight Society members poll on this episode was a landslide in favor of, with only 6% of the vote being against. So, I'm being overruled once more. It seems that you've told another favorite, Betty Ann.
Excellent.
I want to thank the following Midnight Society members for not being afraid to participate in this video's poll.
Did someone say something about fear?
Wait, what are you doing here?
It's called cross-promotion. Besides, I'm a doll, so get out of here. I'll handle it. Wait, I have to read all those names? I'll be here all year. I've got a better idea. A dose of my modified fear toxin should do the trick. Now you should be hallucinating the names of people that you should fear, for they hold the power of the comments. Don't worry, this will wear off shortly and only has minor side effects that include flatulence, dysentery, general malaise, and getting slimed when you say, I don't know. Oh yes, and if you're not watching our other videos that feature me, you're missing out. Seems that the night air is dissipating my toxin faster than expected. I'm out of here.
Sorry about that. What did you all think of Betty Ann's story? Did you see it as a kid? Do you prefer the scary episodes or the bizarre ones? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to check out the next episode about the tale of the bookish babysitter. Until then, Are you afraid of the dark?
Hurry up, sweetie. We don't want to be late for bingo.
Bingo!
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and a share. Be sure to subscribe and click that bell icon to be notified when more Midnight Society episodes go up. And we've got some other cool nostalgic shows on the channel, so stick around. You might find something else that you like.